Hi, y'all. So, we are going to talk about introductions and conclusions. This chapter is super important. Not only, obviously, for your midterm content, but for your outline for your demonstration speeches. Okay, so let's get into it. Why is organization in a speech important? Well, it's incredibly important. It helps the audience members select, attend, understand, and remember your message. And it also helps you as the speaker know where, sorry, I need to change those pronouns, where he, she, or they is or are going with the message, okay? So it's incredibly important. It's not always fun to talk about. It's a dry topic. It's not as juicy as maybe delivery. But y'all, it's so important. You have all heard a presentation where you're like, I don't know if this speaker is coming or going. Like, what are they talking about? So it's really important. And honestly, it's the kind of thing where you don't realize how important it is until it's not there. And you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about. They're jumping all over the place. So I cannot emphasize how important organization is in any presentation. So how do you organize your presentation? Not only in this class, but I would challenge you to do it in any presentation that you give. In fact, I'm going to be honest with you. I was the matron of honor for my sister's wedding. I had an intro, I had a body, and I had a conclusion. Believe it or not, I practice what I preach. So this is a little kind of silly way to think of it, but it is true. Introduction, tell them what you're going to tell them. The body is where you tell them. And then the conclusion, tell them what you just told them. Okay? And y'all, honestly, like this part could go for your English comp classes when you're writing a research paper or whatever. I mean, this is for anything where you have an intro, a body, and a conclusion. All right, introduction is where you tell them what you're going to tell them. So get the audience's attention, give the audience a reason to listen or the relevant statement, establish your credibility. So your credibility is why you are able to give that speech. It could be that you've done research. It could be that you enjoy doing it. It could be that you have done it as a job. Anything, what makes you credible or able, knowledgeable to give that speech. And then state your central idea and your initial preview. So let's talk about the attention getter. This is the first thing you are going to say. When you get up to give your demonstration speech, you're not going to get up there and say, hi, my name is Christy Wiggins. I'm going to be talking about, no. We know your name. That's why you did the Who Am I speech. We know your name. You're not, in this class, you are not going to introduce yourself. You are going to start with the attention getter, okay? So how do you gain attention? You can tell a story, make sure it's short, quoting a famous person or an expert, citing a startling statistic, using a literary reference, or asking the audience a rhetorical question. So let's talk about this. In my class, I don't know if I've said this or not, you are, as the audience, or let me rephrase it, the audience is not going to talk back to you. Just like the Who Am I speeches, you are going to get up there, you are going to present, we are going to listen, and then you're going to sit down, okay? So, but I do let you, so you can ask the audience a rhetorical question, or if you want, you can ask a yes or no question. So I say this because I've seen it, I don't want to say go wrong, but for your sake, so that it doesn't hurt your speech anxiety or make you nervous, if you're going to ask a rhetorical question, I would challenge you to make sure that you tell the audience it is a rhetorical question, okay? Again, I've seen this happen, and I don't think many things are awkward, but I think the speaker felt awkward. I think the audience felt awkward because I say, you're not going to be talking to your class, or I'm sorry, you're not going to be talking to your classmate who's giving the presentation, but then they ask a question and the audience is like, well, do I answer? So if it's a rhetorical question, maybe say, this is a rhetorical question. I don't want you to answer out loud, but think about this. When's the last time that you felt truly happy, or something like that, okay? If it is a yes or no question, I would challenge you to say, raise your hand if blah, blah, blah. That way it's that way your audience knows exactly what you want from them, okay? In this class, I don't want you to ask a question and elicit answers from people, like, all right, when's the last time you felt happy? Anyone? Yesterday. Okay, like we're not doing that just for this class, but you can do that for just a presentation outside of this class. All right, more on the introduction. Avoid silly opening lines. I went over that. My presentation is on. We should know what your presentation is over through your introduction. Okay? You don't need to tell us the topic and you'll get points off. Again, as I said, I will say it once and I'll say it again. You will start with the attention getter. You're not going to tell us what your presentation is on. You're not going to tell us your name. Okay? Develop the introduction last. Why do you do that? Well, let's go back. The introduction is where you tell them what you're going to tell them. Your body is where you tell them. So if you don't even know what you're going to tell them, how are you going to tell them what you're about to tell them? Does that make sense? Does that sound like a riddle? It's not. But my point is, and I didn't realize this or think about this when I was in school. I wish I would have wrapped this around my mind, or I don't know, maybe I wish my instructors would have put it in a perspective like this. But you might be like, okay, well, I know what my steps are. But how many times have you had a theoretical idea of what it's going to be, and then you do research, or then you actually get into it and you're like, oh, dang, this went a different direction than I thought it was going to go. So yes, I'm not saying you have no idea where it's going to go, but sometimes once you actually get into the thick of it, you figure out that it's going in a different direction. So I would challenge you to start with the body, even though the intro and conclusion, or the introduction comes first in order. Don't start and write stuff in order. Where was I? Oh, underdeveloped introductions are problematic. Why? Because if y'all have ever heard of primacy or recency effect, that is why. So primacy effect is where we remember the first thing that we heard. Okay? So if we don't even know what you're going to talk about, do you think people are going to listen intently to the rest? I mean, maybe, because maybe they're going to try to figure it out, but we might just get confused and be like, all right, screw it. I'm going to, not even realizing that, right? Even on a subconscious level, just thinking all right, I'm going to tune out and think about something else. All right, now let's talk about the conclusion, where you tell them what you told them. You are going to transition to your conclusion. I want you to write this down. In this class, your transition to the conclusion will always be in conclusion. Again, your transition to the conclusion in my class will always be in conclusion. I know it's not fancy, I know it's not fun, but guess what? This is a beginner class. I don't care how much experience you might have had in high school or if you just enjoy talking to people, it does not matter. The reason I do that is because even though I have read your outline before you speak, I don't memorize it, obviously. I wish I had that kind of brain where I could just remember everything, but I don't. So I am going to be honest with you. Sometimes students, I don't know if it's that they don't practice or they just panic, because I know they've done the work. I know it's on their outline, but sometimes students just mess up and they just talk and talk and talk. So the transition to the conclusion helps the audience, but not to sound like this, but most importantly me, because I'm the one grading you, know, at least when I hear that in conclusion, I know that you are on your conclusion. So you're going to summarize the presentation, re-emphasize the central idea and initial preview in a memorable way, motivate the audience to respond, provide closure to the presentation. So, more on the conclusion. Avoid abrupt endings. We should not be doing the slow clap when you're done, okay? This shouldn't be our response. Right? We shouldn't be like that test clap that you do when you're like, I think they're done, right? So avoid abrupt endings. Don't just end in the middle of a sentence, okay? Don't ramble on either. I mean, think of psychologically, even if someone is enjoying your presentation, just psychologically, when we know that it's about to be over, when we know that someone is on the last leg of their presentation, we're expecting it to be over. So don't ramble on. You don't want to give any new information either. So what that means is you're not going to bring up a whole new topic and be like, well, another thing is this, but, we don't even need to get onto that. What the hell, right? What do you mean another thing? And you're just bringing that up now? So no new information. Develop the conclusion second after the body. The same reason you develop the introduction first. Or the introduction after you do the body last. Because if you don't know what you just told us, how are you going to recap it for us? And then underdeveloped conclusions are problematic. So if you remember, I mentioned the primacy effect and the recency effect. Primacy effect is where we remember the first thing we hear or see or, whatever. Recency effect is where we remember the last and final thing. So you really want your conclusion to be like a drop the mic moment. Okay? So let's practice. I might have you do something like this, I probably will, for the discussion, but usually when we're in class, I break you into groups and I give you a topic and I have you practice an intro. So here's exactly how your introduction is going to look. Attention getter, we talked about that. Relevance, why should your immediate audience care about your topic? As we talked about in audience analysis, our audiences, every person is egocentric, right? You remember, what's in it for me? So how does it affect them? How can they relate to your topic? Okay? If they can't relate to it, maybe it could affect them later on in life. Or, maybe, okay, if they can't relate to it, that's fine, but why should they care? Your credibility statement, why are you credible to teach us how to do this? So it doesn't have to be that you did research. I'm not requiring research for this speech. It can just be like, oh, I've done this. I've made this dish with my mom since I was a kid, blah, blah, blah. Like that's credibility. That it doesn't have to be hardcore research. It doesn't have to be your life's work has been dedicated to it. Okay. Central idea is the overall idea of your speech. Think of your main topic for your central idea. And then your initial preview. Kind of think of your thesis statement that previews all of your 3 to 5 main points. So the initial previews breaks down your central idea into main points. Okay, so let's look at this. Actually, I am going to pull up your the sample outline so you can see this in action. Okay. Attention getter, will you take $1 for this? So that's kind of like a quote, if you've been to a garage sale or had one, you may have said that, you may have heard that, just a little, people being like, what do you mean? Relevance, remember, why should they care? What does it have to do with them? If you have ever had a garage sale, I am sure you have had plenty of people ask questions like this. So it kind of ties in the attention getter and kind of puts it into perspective. If you have not held a garage sale, I'm sure most of you are at least familiar with what a garage sale is. So I know that might sound stupid, but, don't assume that everyone can relate to your topic, but you can say, I'm sure that you've at least heard of it or whatever. Credibility statement. I have helped my parents and friends with several garage sales in the past, and I've gone to plenty that were not well ran. Central idea. While it may sound like a lot of work, garage sales can be very successful if the proper planning and organization is implemented. Okay, so what's the main idea of your presentation? Initial preview. So today, I am going to tell you how to plan and run a garage sale, including deciding what to sell, setting it up successfully, pricing items, and finally putting together and placing signs. Okay, so by the initial preview, you know exactly what their main points are going to be. In this case, they have 4, right? So hopefully that helps. I don't know what I was going to say. Sorry. Hopefully that helps. If you have questions about that, let me know, because your introduction is very, very important. And your conclusion is, but your introduction, I know it can get tricky with what a good attention getter is, how to make it relevant. And again, we'll be I'm not going to go over it explicitly, but as you're starting your outlines, let me know if you have questions. But don't start your outlines until you've gotten your presentation or your topic approved. All right, y'all. I'm done talking.